Hollywood has always sold the idea of perfection. Flawless stars, glittering premieres, carefully polished images built to make us forget that fame is only a mask. But behind the rehearsed smiles and red carpet poses lies a reality far more unsettling than most audiences ever see. These are the stories the industry never wanted to confront, the accusations buried for years, and the rumors that grew louder until they finally broke through the surface. Some of the actors on this list were rising stars. Others were legends worshipped by millions. Yet they share one thing in common: allegations that cracked their public image and forced Hollywood to reckon with its own shadows. Careers collapsed, reputations crumbled, and carefully constructed. Personas fell apart when the spotlight shifted from glamour to truth. So the question becomes, how deep does the darkness go? And how many beloved stars have been hiding far more than the characters they played? 15. T.J. Miller. T.J. Miller built his career on the kind of comedic presence that felt both fearless and volatile, a performer whose unpredictable energy became his trademark. Audiences loved him for it: the wild improvisations, the chaotic interviews, the sense that no one, including Miller himself, knew what he would say next. But as Hollywood began re-examining the behavior of its stars during the #MeToo era, that unpredictability started to look less like a quirk and more like a warning sign. The controversy began when a woman from his college years accused him of violent sexual behavior allegations that resurfaced long after the pair had last spoken. Miller and his wife immediately denied the claims, describing them as recycled accusations that had already been addressed years earlier. But the timing was crucial in an industry already facing a reckoning. The public responded quickly, and studios moved even faster. HBO announced Miller's departure from Silicon Valley, citing creative reasons, though few people believed that explanation told the whole story. Then came the Amtrak bomb threat incident, a bizarre chapter where Miller reported a supposed danger that authorities later determined to be false. Although the federal case was eventually dismissed, it created an image of instability that overshadowed his comedic talent. For many executives, the two storylines, resurfaced allegations and erratic behavior, merged into a single question: was Miller too risky to work with? Miller insisted that he had become a target of exaggerated accusations and media sensationalism. He argued that the industry was quick to condemn without verifying facts, and he continued to perform stand-up where loyal fans defended him passionately. But Hollywood is a place where perception matters as much as reality, and perception had turned sharply against him. Today, T.J. Miller exists in a strange limbo, not fully exiled, not fully embraced. His name still draws recognition, but the major roles that once seemed inevitable have not returned. His story marks the complicated beginning of this list: a talented comedian whose public persona collided with a cultural moment that demanded accountability, leaving a career caught between the chaos he built and the consequences he never expected. 14. Andy Dick. Andy Dick has always been a figure defined by extremes, an undeniably gifted comedian whose talent was constantly overshadowed by turmoil. From his early days on news radio to his own sketch series, he carved out a niche as Hollywood's eccentric wildcard, the performer everyone expected to be outrageous, both on and off the screen. But over the decades, the chaos that once seemed part of his comedic persona evolved into a long trail of accusations, arrests, and erratic behavior that ultimately consumed his career. By the mid-2000s, stories about Dick began piling up at a pace the industry could no longer ignore. Numerous individuals accused him of inappropriate touching or crossing boundaries at public events, comedy clubs, or private gatherings. Some chalked it up to intoxication or shock humor gone too far, while others described behavior that felt predatory and deeply unsettling. Dick often deflected responsibility by citing addiction struggles, but each apology or denial was quickly followed by a new incident reinforcing the perception that he was spiraling. Producers began distancing themselves. He was removed from reality shows, fired from film sets, and quietly blacklisted from projects after alleged altercations with fellow cast members. In interviews, Dick would oscillate between remorse and defensiveness, admitting past mistakes, but insisting he was misunderstood. Yet, as more allegations surfaced, including arrests tied to sexual battery and burglary, it became clear that his problems ran deeper than poor judgment or comedic provocation. Public sympathy waned as the pattern repeated for years. Each new headline seemed to blur into the next, creating an image of a performer trapped in an endless cycle of destruction. Fans who once celebrated his bizarre, unpredictable charm began to view him through a darker lens, and Hollywood, always sensitive to reputation, let him fade into obscurity. Today, Andy Dick stands as a cautionary figure, a once promising comedian whose career became defined by allegations, instability, and addiction. Whether he was undone by personal demons, fame that magnified his flaws, or genuine misconduct, the outcome is the same. The laughter he was known for has long been replaced by a legacy marked by controversy and lost potential. 13. George Takei. George Takei has long been admired as more than just an actor. As the iconic helmsman Sulu in Star Trek, he helped break racial barriers on television. Later, he became a respected activist, using his voice to champion LGBTQ+ rights, immigration issues, and civil liberties. With his disciplined public persona and decades of community work, Takei built an image of steady moral authority, which made the allegations that surfaced in 2017 all the more shocking for longtime fans. The controversy began when a former male model accused Takei of groping him in the early 1980s, alleging that the actor had taken advantage of him after a night of heavy drinking. Takei responded swiftly and forcefully, calling the claims categorically false and insisting that the incident described simply never occurred. The timing, emerging during the height of the #MeToo movement, ensured the story spread rapidly across major news outlets and social media. As journalists and investigators looked deeper, no additional accusers came forward, and no formal legal action was taken. But in the world of online discourse, where perception often moves faster than evidence, the accusation cast a shadow over Takei's otherwise spotless public reputation. Some supporters defended him, pointing to his decades-long advocacy for marginalized communities as evidence of his integrity. Others questioned whether anyone, no matter how respected, could be entirely above scrutiny. Takei temporarily withdrew from some public engagements, and conversations about his case became part of a broader cultural debate. How should society treat allegations that surface decades after the fact, with no clear way to verify or disprove them? The ambiguity left room for interpretation, and interpretations varied widely, depending on viewers' preconceived beliefs and loyalties. Over time, the controversy faded, and Takei resumed his activism and public presence. Yet the story never fully disappeared. It became a footnote in discussions about the complexities of the #MeToo era, a reminder that even beloved icons could find themselves entangled in allegations that challenge long-held perceptions. George Takei's situation remains one of the more nuanced entries on this list. With only a single public accuser and no legal case, the narrative sits in a gray zone, highlighting the tension between personal legacy and the power of allegation. It raises uncomfortable questions about trust memory and how society chooses to weigh accusations against decades of public behavior. 12. Jeremy Piven. For years, Jeremy Piven embodied the sharp-tongued, fast-paced energy of Hollywood power. His award-winning performance as Ari Gold in Entourage turned him into a cultural icon, the kind of actor whose delivery swagger and intensity made him unforgettable. Off-screen Piven cultivated a reputation for professionalism and charisma, appearing in dramas, comedies, and talk shows with equal ease. But in 2017, that polished image fractured when multiple women came forward with allegations that forced the industry to re-examine his behavior. The accusations ranged from unwanted touching to claims of aggressive sexual advances in both professional and private settings. Several women described encounters where they said Piven crossed boundaries and abused his status. Piven denied every allegation, calling them fabrications, and publicly stating that he had never acted non-consensually. In an attempt to defend himself, he volunteered to take a polygraph test, a move he hoped would signal confidence in his innocence. Still, the fallout was swift. CBS canceled his drama Wisdom of the Crowd, citing declining ratings, but acknowledging that the controversy made continuation nearly impossible. HBO, once home to Piven's most beloved character, quietly distanced itself as media coverage intensified. Projects in development went silent, and producers who had once praised his talent now hesitated to attach his name to anything that could attract unwanted scrutiny. As the #MeToo movement expanded, Piven became one of its most debated subjects. Supporters argued that he was unfairly lumped into a cultural moment where allegations alone could be career-ending. Critics argued that the consistency across accusations raised legitimate concerns. The public response fractured, creating an environment where neither side felt fully satisfied. In the years that followed, Piven shifted his focus to stand-up comedy and podcasting, attempting to rebuild his career outside traditional studio systems. He framed his situation as the product of a media landscape eager for scandal, emphasizing that nothing he did warranted the collapse of his reputation. Yet Hollywood, an industry deeply protective of its image, remained cautious. Even without criminal charges, the stain of controversy lingered. Jeremy Piven's story represents the complicated intersection of fame allegation and modern accountability. Whether viewed as an unfair casualty or a figure facing deserved scrutiny, the impact on his career is undeniable. The actor who once seemed unstoppable now finds himself navigating an industry that rarely forgives and never forgets. 11. CeeLo Green. CeeLo Green was once one of the most distinctive voices in modern pop culture, a singer, rapper, and television personality whose presence felt larger than life. From his breakout success with Gnarls Barkley to his chart-topping solo hits and his charismatic run as a coach on The Voice, he cultivated an image of eccentric brilliance. He was bold, unpredictable, and wildly talented. But in 2013, that vibrant persona collided with allegations that dramatically shifted the public's perception of him. The controversy began when a woman accused Green of drugging and assaulting her after a dinner in Los Angeles. The case quickly drew national attention, not only for the seriousness of the allegations, but also for Green's celebrity status at the time. Prosecutors ultimately chose not to pursue sexual assault charges, citing insufficient evidence. However, Green pleaded no contest to furnishing a controlled substance, a decision that carried legal consequences and intensified public debate. What damaged his reputation even more were his own words. After the case gained traction, Green posted a series of social media comments, attempting to explain his view of consent. Instead, the remarks were widely condemned as dismissive and insensitive. Within days, NBC announced he would not return to The Voice, and his planned reality series was pulled from production. The backlash was swift and severe, signaling a dramatic shift in how audiences and networks responded to controversy. In the aftermath, Green apologized publicly, insisting that his comments were taken out of context, and that he never intended to minimize the seriousness of assault. He stepped away from the spotlight for several years, re-emerging gradually through live performances and smaller musical projects. Despite his attempts at rebuilding his image, the shadow of the allegations, and particularly the fallout from his comments, continued to shape how the public viewed him. For many observers, CeeLo Green's story became a lesson in the power of public perception. Legal outcomes mattered, but so did words, tone, and timing, especially in an era where accountability was gaining prominence. His journey reflects how quickly a celebrated career can shift when personal controversy intersects with cultural change, and how difficult it is to regain trust once it has been broken. 10. Chris Noth. For decades, Chris Noth carried an image of effortless sophistication. As Mr. Big on Sex and the City, he became one of television's most recognizable romantic figures, charming, polished, and undeniably iconic. His long-running role on Law and Order reinforced his presence as a steady, authoritative performer. Noth wasn't just another actor. He was a familiar face woven into the fabric of American pop culture. That familiarity made the allegations that emerged in the early 2020s especially jarring, a sharp contrast to the persona audiences had grown to trust. In 2021, two women accused Noth of sexual assault in incidents they said occurred years apart. Their stories, published in a major investigative article, described encounters marked by coercion and emotional manipulation. Noth denied the allegations, immediately calling the claims false and insisting that all interactions had been consensual. But as the initial story spread, additional women stepped forward with their own accounts of unwanted advances or inappropriate behavior, further intensifying the public scrutiny. The fallout was immediate and devastating to Noth's career. A high-profile Peloton commercial featuring him was pulled within days. His talent agency ended their relationship with him. CBS removed his character from The Equalizer, despite his central role in the series. Even and just like that, the revival of Sex and the City quietly eliminated plans to bring him back in future episodes. In a matter of weeks, the familiar figure audiences had known for decades saw his professional world collapse. Noth expressed frustration in interviews, arguing that he was being condemned without due process and that the accusations distorted his life and character. But public opinion had shifted. The details of the allegations, combined with the number of women involved, created a narrative that studios and brands were unwilling to risk being associated with. No criminal charges were filed, and the legal system did not determine guilt or innocence. Yet in Hollywood, where careers depend as much on perception as on performance, the consequences were swift and severe. Noth stepped back from public life, issuing statements through representatives rather than appearing in front of cameras. Chris Noth's fall serves as a stark reminder of how quickly the entertainment industry can turn when long-buried allegations rise to the surface. Whether viewed as a man unfairly judged or as another figure held accountable in a transformed cultural landscape. His story marks a major shift in how Hollywood handles accusations and how audiences respond when familiar icons face unsettling claims. 9. Michael Douglas. Michael Douglas has long been considered Hollywood royalty, the son of Kirk Douglas, a celebrated actor in his own right, and a star whose career stretched across generations. Known for portraying charming anti-heroes and morally conflicted figures in films like Wall Street, Fatal Attraction, and Basic Instinct, he built a career on roles that explored the darker edges of human behavior. But in 2018, the line between his on-screen complexity and his off-screen life abruptly blurred when past allegations resurfaced and thrust his name into an uncomfortable spotlight. Before any formal report was published, Douglas made the unusual decision to address the claims himself. He revealed that a former employee had accused him of inappropriate conduct decades earlier, including using explicit language and creating an uncomfortable work environment. Douglas denied the allegations completely, calling them false, and insisting he was speaking out early to prevent the story from defining him before the facts were known. His proactive approach drew mixed reactions. Some saw transparency, while others saw an attempt to control the narrative. As the story circulated, the accuser later gave her account, publicly describing moments she said made her feel demeaned or targeted. The allegations did not lead to a lawsuit or criminal investigation, and no additional accusers stepped forward. Still, the situation raised questions about workplace dynamics and the blurred lines between power, personality, and professionalism in earlier eras of Hollywood. Public response was divided. Many fans and colleagues defended Douglas, pointing to decades of respectful behavior and his long-standing reputation as a dedicated family man. Others argued that power imbalances from past decades often went unchallenged, and that resurfacing allegations deserved careful examination even without legal proceedings. The ambiguity created a gray area, one that reflected larger conversations happening across the industry. Throughout the controversy, Douglas remained vocal, expressing frustration at what he saw as character assassination, but also acknowledging that these cultural conversations were important. His wife, Catherine Zeta-Jones, addressed the issue as well, emphasizing the importance of supporting both victims and the falsely accused. Over time, the story faded from headlines, and Douglas continued working, maintaining his stature as a respected veteran of the industry. Yet the incident remains a subtle footnote in his legacy, a reminder that even the most established and admired figures are not immune to scrutiny in a Hollywood increasingly determined to confront past behavior. Michael Douglas's entry on this list is one of the more complex cases, not about criminal accusations or career-ending allegations, but about how quickly public perception can shift when old claims reappear in a new cultural era. 8. Casey Affleck. Casey Affleck spent most of his career cultivating a quiet, introspective presence, the kind of actor praised for subtlety rather than spectacle. Critics admired his ability to convey emotional depth with minimal dialogue, and his Oscar-winning performance in Manchester by the Sea cemented him as one of Hollywood's most respected talents. But long before he accepted that golden statue, unresolved allegations from the past resurfaced, challenging the carefully crafted image of a thoughtful, serious performer. The controversy dates back to 2010, when two women who worked with Affleck on the mockumentary I'm Still Here filed separate civil lawsuits alleging sexual harassment and inappropriate behavior during production. Their claims included crude comments, unwanted advances, and unprofessional conduct that they said created a hostile work environment. Affleck denied all allegations, insisting the lawsuits were baseless and motivated by financial pressure. Ultimately, both cases were settled out of court, with no admission of wrongdoing, a resolution that satisfied neither critics nor supporters. For several years, the story remained relatively quiet. But when Affleck earned widespread acclaim leading up to the 2017 awards season, the accusations returned to public attention with renewed force. On social media and in interviews, many questioned whether someone with such allegations in his past should be celebrated at the industry's highest level. Brie Larson's silent refusal to applaud when presenting Affleck the Oscar became a defining moment, symbolizing the broader discomfort many felt. Affleck later addressed the issue more directly, expressing regret for the unprofessional atmosphere on the film's set, but maintaining that the specific allegations against him were untrue. He emphasized his commitment to creating respectful work environments moving forward, acknowledging that his behavior and oversight during the production had fallen short of evolving industry expectations. Yet the shadow lingered. In the years that followed, Affleck stepped back from the spotlight, focusing on independent films and smaller creative projects. He skipped presenting duties at the next Academy Awards, citing a desire to avoid distraction. While he continues to work steadily, his career trajectory shifted, no longer framed as a rising Hollywood powerhouse, but as a talented actor navigating a complicated public legacy. Casey Affleck's story is a prime example of how past allegations, even without criminal charges, can permanently alter the way audiences and peers perceive an artist. It raises difficult questions about accountability, growth, and whether professional accomplishments can ever fully eclipse unresolved controversies. 7. John Travolta. John Travolta's career is one of the most remarkable arcs in Hollywood. A meteoric rise in the 70s, a slump in the 80s, and a stunning comeback in the 90s that made him a global icon all over again. With legendary roles in Grease, Saturday Night Fever, and Pulp Fiction, he became synonymous with charm, coolness, and effortless star power. But behind that polished public image, Travolta has spent years navigating a persistent wave of allegations that continually reshaped how audiences perceived him. Throughout the 2000s and 2010s, multiple male massage therapists accused Travolta of inappropriate behavior during private sessions. Their allegations varied, but often described similar encounters involving unwanted advances or physical contact. Travolta's legal team responded aggressively to every case, calling the accusations fabricated, opportunistic, and motivated by financial gain. Several lawsuits were withdrawn, dismissed, or never pursued further yet. Each new claim reignited public debate. Complicating the narrative was Travolta's long-standing association with the Church of Scientology. Critics speculated without concrete evidence that the institution's powerful legal and public relations machinery shielded him from greater fallout. Travolta himself rarely addressed the accusations publicly, choosing instead to remain focused on his work and philanthropic activities. The silence, while strategic, left room for speculation that continued to follow him. For a time, the controversies seemed to exist in a strange feedback loop. No criminal charges were ever filed, and many allegations lacked corroboration, yet the repeated headlines created a sense of smoke that some believed suggested fire. Meanwhile, Travolta maintained a calm, almost serene public demeanor, insisting through representatives that the claims were fiction designed to exploit his fame. Tragedy later touched Travolta's personal life, with the loss of his wife, actress Kelly Preston, a moment that softened public scrutiny and reminded audiences of his humanity beyond the tabloids. He gradually stepped back from Hollywood's center stage, choosing selective projects and spending more time away from the intense glare of fame. Today, John Travolta remains a respected entertainer, but the persistent shadow of allegations continues to hover at the edges of his legacy. His story is a complex blend of adoration, suspicion, and cultural fascination, a case where fame protected him, harmed him, and defined him all at once. Whether audiences view him with skepticism or sympathy often depends less on legal facts than on how they interpret the decades-long tug-of-war between accusation and image. 6. Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen's life has always unfolded like a tabloid fever dream, wild, erratic, gripping, and impossible to look away from. At his peak, he was the highest-paid actor on television, the magnetic star of 2.5 Men, whose off-screen persona seemed to blend seamlessly with the hedonistic bachelor he played on screen. But as the 2000s gave way to the 2010s, the fine line between performance and reality collapsed, revealing a pattern of allegations and behavior that would redefine his legacy. Sheen had long been associated with excess drugs, alcohol, public outbursts, and volatile relationships. Over the years, multiple former partners accused him of physical or emotional abuse, harassment, or manipulative behavior. Some claimed he threatened them. Others said he used his fame to intimidate or control. Sheen denied many of these accusations, framing them as distortions fueled by personal disputes or media sensationalism. But the volume and consistency of the stories made it increasingly difficult for the public to separate rumor from reality. In 2015, Sheen publicly announced that he was HIV positive, alleging that several individuals had extorted him by threatening to expose his medical status. The revelation triggered another wave of scrutiny, including civil suits from women who claimed he had endangered them. Sheen insisted he always disclosed his diagnosis once he knew it himself, calling accusations of deliberate concealment completely false. Still, the lawsuits added to an already fraught narrative. Professionally, his behavior led to one of the most notorious firings in TV history. After months of public meltdowns, attacks on his show's creator, and bizarre interviews about Tiger Blood and winning Warner Brothers, terminated his contract. Sheen attempted a comeback with anger management, but the series struggled to overcome the turbulence surrounding his personal life. Each new accusation, whether about violence threats or reckless behavior, reinforced the perception that Sheen was spiraling. In later years, Sheen expressed regret for his past actions, acknowledging addiction and mental health struggles that had fueled destructive behavior. He insisted he was sober, reflective, and committed to change. Some fans embraced the idea of redemption. Others remained skeptical, believing the damage was too deep to undo. Charlie Sheen's story is one of Hollywood's most dramatic cautionary tales, a gifted actor whose fame amplified his demons, whose public unraveling played out in real time, and whose legacy remains entangled in the allegations, chaos, and self-inflicted wounds that defined an era. His rise and fall ask a lingering question: how much of a star's downfall is personal failure, and how much is the inevitable consequence of a culture that rewards excess until it destroys the person living it? 5. Danny Masterson. Danny Masterson spent years cultivating the image of the effortlessly cool rebel, the laid-back Hyde from That 70s Show, the guy who delivered sarcasm with a smirk and turned a sitcom role into a cultural touchstone. Off-screen, he built a reputation as a private, disciplined figure, closely tied to the Church of Scientology, and known for keeping his personal life out of the spotlight. But starting in the late 2010s, that carefully guarded image imploded when multiple women came forward with allegations that would eventually lead to one of Hollywood's most public criminal cases in the post-Me Too era. Between 2017 and 2020, several women, many of whom were also members or former members of Scientology, accused Masterson of rape and sexual assault, dating back to the early 2000s. They alleged that the church discouraged them from reporting the incidents to law enforcement, creating a system that protected Masterson while isolating his accusers. Masterson denied all allegations, calling them outrageous, and insisting that every encounter had been consensual. For years, the case moved slowly as investigators gathered testimony and navigated the complexities of bringing decades-old allegations to court. But once charges were filed, Masterson's life changed overnight. Netflix fired him from the ranch, and both fans and former co-stars distanced themselves publicly. The trial itself became a focal point of cultural debate, one part Hollywood scandal, one part examination of Scientology's influence. The first trial ended in a hung jury, but a retrial brought harrowing testimony from the accusers. In 2023, Masterson was convicted on 2 counts of rape and later sentenced to 30 years to life in prison, one of the harshest sentences given to a well-known actor in recent history. Throughout the proceedings, he maintained his innocence and vowed to appeal, arguing through his lawyers that the case had been mishandled and that key evidence had been misunderstood. The fallout extended beyond Masterson himself. His wife, Bijou Phillips, initially supported him in court, but filed for divorce shortly after the sentencing. Several Church of Scientology practices became central topics of public scrutiny, and industry insiders questioned how such allegations could remain hidden for so long. Today, Masterson sits in a California prison, a stark reminder that even beloved sitcom stars can face severe consequences when long-buried accusations finally surface. His story stands apart from others on this list for a simple reason: while many allegations never reach a courtroom. Masterson's case ended with a conviction that permanently transformed his public legacy from comedy icon to cautionary tale. 4. Sean Diddy Combs. Sean Diddy Combs has long been regarded as one of the most influential figures in modern entertainment, a producer, rapper, fashion mogul, and entrepreneur whose empire shaped hip-hop culture for more than 3 decades. From founding Bad Boy Records to launching successful clothing lines and liquor partnerships, Diddy built a brand synonymous with ambition, luxury, and relentless reinvention. But behind the image of the self-made mogul, a series of disturbing allegations erupted in the 2020s that reshaped the world's perception of one of music's most powerful men. The controversy ignited in late 2023 when Cassie Ventura, Diddy's longtime partner, filed a civil lawsuit accusing him of years of physical abuse, sexual coercion, and manipulation. Her lawsuit painted a picture of a life controlled by fear and power imbalances, describing incidents that allegedly occurred behind the closed doors of Diddy's inner circle. Within 24 hours, the case was settled, a move that brought even more attention, as critics argued the rapid resolution signaled urgency to avoid public litigation. Diddy denied wrongdoing through legal channels, and the settlement included no admission of guilt. But the accusations didn't stop. Other individuals, former partners, employees, and associates emerged with their own claims of violence, coercion, or exploitation. Their stories varied in detail, but shared similar themes: power wielded without accountability, and a culture of intimidation surrounding the mogul's empire. Meanwhile, federal investigators launched probes into Diddy's business dealings and personal life. In early 2024, multiple properties linked to him were raided by Homeland Security agents, fueling widespread speculation about the scope of the investigation. Brands and collaborators quickly distanced themselves. Projects were halted. Corporate partnerships dissolved. For an artist whose influence helped define entire eras of music and fashion, the shift was dramatic, a near-instant reversal of decades of cultural dominance. Diddy publicly denied all allegations, calling them lies, and insisting he was the target of opportunistic attacks. His supporters highlighted his philanthropic work and business achievements, while critics argued the scale and consistency of the accusations demanded deeper scrutiny. As investigations continue, Diddy's legacy hangs in limbo. The man once celebrated as a visionary entrepreneur now faces a storm of allegations that threatens to overshadow his contributions to music and culture. Whether he is ultimately vindicated or further implicated remains to be seen, but one truth is already clear. Diddy's downfall marks one of the most significant and far-reaching reckonings in modern entertainment, a reminder that power, no matter how vast, cannot always shield someone from the consequences of their past. 3. James Franco. James Franco once embodied the idea of the modern Hollywood Renaissance man. Actor, director, screenwriter, professor, he moved effortlessly between art house films and mainstream projects, building a reputation as one of the most versatile talents of his generation. Performances in 127 Hours, Pineapple Express, and The Disaster Artist earned him critical acclaim awards and a devoted following. But beneath the surface of creativity and intellectual ambition, Franco's public image began to fracture when multiple women accused him of behavior that blurred or crossed deeply inappropriate boundaries. The turning point came in 2018, when 5 women, several of whom had been students at his acting school Studio 4, alleged that Franco used his influence as a teacher and mentor to pressure them into explicit scenes and uncomfortable situations. They described an environment where the line between professional instruction and personal interest became dangerously unclear, alleging that Franco promoted opportunities in exchange for participation in simulated or sexual acts. Franco denied the accusations, insisting all interactions were consensual and that he had never exploited anyone. Still, the fallout was immediate. Interviews meant to promote the disaster artist shifted into tense exchanges about misconduct. His Golden Globes win just days after the allegations surfaced sparked backlash, with critics questioning why Hollywood continued to celebrate a man under such scrutiny. The symbolism was powerful. While Franco wore a Time's Up pin on stage, actresses watching from home felt it was a hollow gesture. In 2021, after years of relative silence, Franco reached a civil settlement with 2 of the accusers. The agreement included a payment, but no admission of wrongdoing. Not long after, Franco publicly acknowledged engaging in inappropriate relationships with students, calling them a mistake, and admitting he had used his status in ways he now regretted. His comments were intended as accountability, but many saw them as too little too late. Professionally, the consequences have been stark. Franco vanished from major studio projects, his once thriving career replaced by sporadic independent work far from the Hollywood mainstream. Former collaborators distanced themselves, including Seth Rogen, who announced he would no longer work with him. For an actor once considered brilliant, unpredictable, and endlessly inventive, the cultural shift was dramatic. James Franco's story illustrates how charisma and talent cannot erase allegations of exploitation, especially when those allegations come from people who trusted him as a mentor. Whether his attempts at rehabilitation will ever lead to a full return remains uncertain, but his fall is already etched into Hollywood history as a reminder of what happens when power and vulnerability collide. 2. Bill Cosby. For decades, Bill Cosby was more than a comedian. He was a cultural institution. Through The Cosby Show, he shaped an image of warmth, wisdom, and fatherly authority that transcended television and entered American households as a symbol of trust. His clean, family-friendly persona made him one of the most beloved entertainers of the 20th century. That's what made the allegations that emerged and multiplied so shocking. They didn't just challenge his reputation, they shattered the foundation of a decades-long public myth. Beginning as early as the 1960s, dozens of women accused Cosby of drugging and assaulting them during private encounters. Many described nearly identical experiences, being offered a drink or pill, losing consciousness, and waking up to discover that something had happened without their consent. For years, these accounts were whispered, but dismissed, overshadowed by Cosby's enormous cultural influence. That changed in 2014 when a viral stand-up clip reignited public interest and opened the floodgates for survivors to come forward. Cosby denied all allegations, insisting that every encounter was consensual and accusing the media of orchestrating a coordinated attack on his legacy. But the pressure mounted. Investigations reopened. Civil suits were filed. Old settlements became public knowledge. The sheer scale of accusations, more than 60 women, transformed Cosby from America's dad into the face of Hollywood's most disturbing open secret. The legal turning point came in 2018 when Cosby was convicted of aggravated indecent assault against Andrea Constand. He received a sentence of 3 to 10 years, becoming one of the first major celebrities in the post-#MeToo era to be imprisoned. For some, it was long-delayed justice. For others, it was a moment of reckoning for an entertainment industry that had protected powerful men for too long. But the story didn't end there. In 2021, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned the conviction on procedural grounds, ruling that a prior non-prosecution agreement had been violated. Cosby was released, though the court emphasized that the decision did not reflect innocence or guilt, only legal error. His release triggered a national debate renewing questions about accountability, statutes of limitations, and the complex intersection of law and morality. Today, Cosby lives largely out of the public eye, his reputation permanently fractured. Supporters describe him as a victim of media hysteria. Survivors and advocates view his case as a symbol of how power can delay justice for decades. Regardless of viewpoint, one truth remains: the fall of Bill Cosby was one of the most dramatic and consequential in modern entertainment history, a moment when an icon's carefully crafted image collapsed under the weight of collective testimony. 1. Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey once stood at the very peak of Hollywood prestige, a performer whose talent was so undeniable that audiences and critics viewed him as one of the greatest actors of his generation. With iconic roles in The Usual Suspects' American Beauty and the political thriller House of Cards, he mastered the art of playing complex, morally ambiguous characters. But beginning in 2017, Spacey's real life became far more dramatic than anything he had portrayed on screen, as a series of allegations transformed him from a revered artist into one of the most polarizing figures in modern entertainment. The first public accusation came from actor Anthony Rapp, who alleged that Spacey made a sexual advance toward him when he was a minor in the 1980s. Spacey responded with a statement claiming he did not remember the incident, but apologized for what he said may have been inappropriate drunken behavior. In that same statement, he came out as gay, a move widely condemned, as an attempt to deflect attention from the accusation. The backlash was swift, and more men soon emerged with their own claims of misconduct, some involving alleged groping or coercive advances in professional and social settings. Spacey denied the allegations, but the professional consequences were immediate. Netflix cut ties with him, halting production on House of Cards and removing him from future seasons. In an unprecedented decision, director Ridley Scott reshot Spacey's role in All the Money in the World just weeks before the film's release, replacing him entirely. The move symbolized a remarkable shift. Hollywood, once slow to distance itself from major stars, acted with unprecedented speed. Legal challenges followed. Spacey faced charges in both the United States and the United Kingdom. Some cases were dismissed due to insufficient evidence or dropped when accusers declined to testify. But the most notable trial took place in London in 2023, where a jury found him not guilty on multiple counts of sexual assault. Spacey broke down in tears upon hearing the verdict, saying he finally felt he could begin to rebuild his life. Despite the acquittal, Hollywood has remained cautious. Though legally cleared in several cases, the long shadow of the allegations still hangs over his career. Spacey has appeared in smaller international projects, and in interviews he has expressed hope for a return to mainstream work, but the industry has yet to openly welcome him back. Kevin Spacey's story is one of the most complex on this list. A collision of extraordinary talent, deeply unsettling accusations, legal exoneration in some courts, and lingering doubt in the court of public opinion. His downfall represents a critical moment in Hollywood's evolving understanding of power, accountability, and the question of whether redemption is ever truly possible when allegations, not verdicts, shape the legacy of a star. Hollywood has always depended on illusion, perfect faces, flawless stories, and the comforting belief that the people behind our favorite characters are better than the roles they play. But as this countdown shows, once again, the truth is far more complicated. Behind fame, a different reality exists, one shaped by allegations, power imbalances, and the kind of silence that can last for years before finally breaking. Some of the men here denied everything. Some faced trials. Some watched entire careers collapse in a matter of days. Their stories are not the same, but they all reveal the same unsettling truth. The entertainment industry is built on a foundation that often hides more than it reveals. And when the spotlight finally turns the shadows around, it grows impossible to ignore. These cases remind us that fame does not guarantee innocence, and that the world is still uncovering what Hollywood worked so hard to keep hidden. If you want to continue exploring the dark corners of the industry, remember to like the video, share your thoughts below, and subscribe to Hollywood's Hidden Room, where the lights never stay on for long, and every secret eventually finds its way out.